just read the newest edition of The Hunger Games, Hamish's story. So, not going to fully talk about that, but obviously it's going to come in at some point. The unaliving of Prim, I feel like a lot of people aren't talking enough about certain aspects of it. So if we're going to go with my very bad representation of the story, so I can try to figure out what exactly I'm trying to say, is when I read Mockingjay, I read them when they all came out, which was forever ago. But when I read it as Coin missed her one and only shot. If you're kind of going to go with a theme of like chess, for example, Coin and Snow were on both sides of the board. Snow thought Katniss was the queen. And in chess, the queen can move different locations. She's one of the best players. The problem is, I don't think Snow knew all of the actual players. Because if he did, Katniss was actually a pawn, not the queen. Same for Prim, Gale, Peeta. Though Hamish was actually one of the main players, he's basically the queen in a sense. And I'll get back to that. Now, Coin kind of did the same thing. She knew more of Snow's players. She took some of Snow's players from his side of the board that he didn't even know he lost, and put them pretty much as her main tokens. Now, that's kind of where this is a little different from what I've seen a lot of other people do. Hold. When you think of it in that perspective, more of a chess perspective, we're going to go into the fact of why Coin was the only one who was playing with who she, again, thought at this time before the unaliving of Prim that she had all the pieces. Snow thought he did, really didn't. Now with that, the unaliving of Prim was one of the most just parts of all the stories. Like, there's so much of people either describing how they feel about it, they have analyzed it. My thing about Prim unaliving is, again, Coin only had one shot for Katniss. One shot. And she missed it. She used Prim to get Katniss, though she also needed Prim out of the game. Again, going back to my chess, it's an analogy. Gale and Prim were pawns. They got to the end of the board when they hit District 13. And in chess, when pawns get to end to the board, they can become more players. They enhance other players. Gale, rook. You can become a rook. Prim kind of became her own queen. All of Pan Am at that point loves Prim. 100%. Even Snow, from what I can remember, never really went against Prim until the bombing of 12. He might have mentioned that he was going to, he might have said he was going to, but he didn't actually go against Prim. Even Joanna had mentioned that in the second book, that Snow cannot go against Prim because all of Pan Am loves her. And now, at this point, District 13 loved Prim too. All of District 13 loved Prim. District 13 barely cared about Katniss or Peeta. They agreed with Katniss after a while, but they didn't like the fact that she didn't automatically assume that she's going to be the next Mockingjay. They just said, that's your point. That's what else are you supposed to do? That is what we are here for. But they didn't really give her a chance. They didn't even care. They were mad that she wasn't going to automatically be like, yep, I'm going to be the Mockingjay. We're going to get this revolution going. They were mad about that. Prim followed all of District 13's analogies. She adapted very well into District 13 when she got there from after 12. And then Katniss and Prim both got loved by District 13 when they did that crazy cat game, and Katniss at this point was like full Mockingjay. They didn't like Peeta at first. They eventually accepted Peeta, but he wasn't liked. They were still mad that he, again, when he was taken into the Capitol, was saying, oh, let's, try not to do this war. Where they didn't accept the fact that he wasn't allowed to say that he actually wants a war. I mean, he was literally taking into the district. Which is why we can come back to that just a little bit. During that time, Prim was the reason we had the Mockingjay. She is the only reasonable, and Katniss was the only one who actually would listen to Prim. That's taking on multiple occasions. She has straight up said Prim is like the only person she loves, the only person she listened to, and the only person she really cared about. So when Prim was talking to her in the bunker, Katniss was listening. Plus, Katniss needed the actual advice of someone who wanted her to be able to be herself and not just a tribute and not just a victor and then not just the Mockingjay. No one in Katniss's life, other than Prim and Peeta, really cared about her at all. Hamish eventually did. But even then, he still used her. Cinna kind of used her. Her mom barely existed, and I know that her mom had a lot of other things going, but Katniss, we're reading it in Katniss' story. Katniss doesn't care what her mom has to say, do, or anything. She doesn't ask permission. She never has. There came a point where Katniss took care of her and Prim. That was it. She could care less about basically anybody else. The only reason she even got a partnership with Gale is because they both could feed each other family better. So she barely even cared about Gale until the very end. And even then, he kind of used her too. So, Snow mentioned in Mockingjay after the unaliving of Prim that one, he was sorry. Again, manipulation, but he was the only one to actually say, I'm sorry, you lost the only person in your entire life that you actually care about. Like 100%, and we always knew you cared. She eventually, does care a lot and loves Peeta and probably even Gale, and they're both their own ways. Though, Snow also said, this is the most important part. You were looking at me, I was looking at you, and nobody was watching everybody else. We didn't even know what everybody else was doing and who everybody else was. This is important because Snow lost his one and only shot of getting rid of Katniss. And that I'm going to have to do part 2. Hold. When you think about the fact that there is a lot of players, we have to break it down. Katniss and Peeta, two complete opposite sides, generally trying to work together a little bit, on and off. Then we have Prim, we have Hamish, we have Gale, we also have Huckabee, Heavensby, I can't pronounce his name. Anyway, they're all in, not all, they're in District 13. Snow has Peeta, Joanna, and Annie, which is why I didn't add Finnick to this. Snow's one and only shot of unaliving Katniss was in the second Hunger Game. Now, the first Hunger Games, yeah, he could have also got her. They tried. But I don't think he really thought her as a threat as much as he obviously did in the second one, which is why he put her into the second one. The whole, obviously, they just happened to pull the right card, and it just happened to send the victors when all the victors were either for or against the Capitol, and all the ones that were against the Capitol has went back into the the next arena. They all happen to be picked at that point. Because even I don't remember if any other. Well, there was two volunteers, I believe. The one Brutus from District 2 and Mags. Now they did not take Mags originally. It was supposed to be Annie and Finnick. I'm going to assume the Capitol knew because they eventually did take her and also did unfortunate things to her in the Capitol to get back at Finnick. So they purposely needed to put Annie in with Finnick. Whether she was a rebel or not, it didn't matter because Finnick might have been. And we know at the end, he was. So with Annie being in, there was definitely going to be a chance of he's going to save her over anybody else. And that's where I really think Mags was like, first off, Annie was destroyed from her games. Most of the victors end up being, in some capacity, destroyed from their games. Because you can't go into a game like that and not come out destroyed. Unless you're like Brutus, who volunteered to go back in for. Maybe they were even going to pick up one of his other people, but I doubt it. The point is that Mags saved multiple people by going in for Annie. She knew she wasn't going to survive. All of the tributes that eventually have helped Katniss and Peeta destroy the arena. Well, it wasn't just Katniss and Peeta, but their goal was to make sure Katniss and or Peeta, protect both of them really, were the winners of that game. Which is important because Mags made it so Finnick could save them. Or at least help as much as physically possible on saving Katniss and Peeta. He literally does save Peeta in the games. Which is why, for that perspective, it made everybody know how much Katniss really actually does love Peeta. Whether she knows it or not, because at this point, the poor girl, they all got so much trauma where it's hard to want to love somebody, even when they do all this stuff for you, but getting told you have from now on, this is the only person you're ever going to be able to be with. That's it. She wasn't sure what she was feeling for him. She always knew about him. She always loved him. Again, that was in the first book, and she even told us multiple perspectives of herself in the fact that Peeta was always there for her. But she wasn't caring. Her goal was to keep her and Prim alive. And then her mother, and then Gale's family. And up until the basically very end of Mockingjay, she does that. Gale even was like, oh, I only had, that going for me saving her family. And it's like, I don't mind Gale. I also just don't like Gale. I was a huge Peeta fan. Not the point. The point is, Gale did help save Prim and made it so she could leave District 12 and get to District 13. Which made Katniss also be able to be the Mockingjay. If Prim was gone, they would not have had a Mockingjay. Honestly, Katniss either A, would have been completely done, wiped out, nothing, or she was going to go rogue. And we've seen some of the clips that they were available for her, and she went rogue, like District 8, and she does her own rogue stuff. Let's be real here, that girl is a BA. But the main issue is Katniss can't be told what to do. She's really bad at getting told what to do. One, Snow told her after he realized that she's a huge threat after the first Hunger Games. Not before really, like during the games, she was a potential to win. But they didn't really care or anything until that, because she was giving a good game. Snow only realized she's a big player after the first Hunger Games, and he told her that she has to stop the district from rebelling. The problem is she can't do it. Every time she tried, it made it even worse. Every time she tried to get the district to stop, she even realized, she's like, I'm not doing anything. There's no stopping this. No, I'm just going to go back to what I was doing anyways, which is surviving. And that was even, I think, by the end of the Hunger Games, after, during the tour, which actually I think was the second book, but the beginning of the second book. She wasn't even in the next Hunger Games at this point. So, that made it so Snow realized he has to unalive Katniss. He wants the districts to stop rebelling. She is their Mockingjay. And then he does put her in the game. Now, if he was not so watching Katniss, like so focused on Katniss, he would have realized there's other ways he probably could have went about it. Say the second game was close to being like just family, friends, mentors of the tributes, of the victors. Not the victors themselves, because, they can't, but all friends, family, store owners that they go to their favorite store, because some of them just have no family whatsoever left. He could have destroyed Katniss. Because, again, if you're going to go with the age limit, keep it from 12 to 18, no more, no less. Prim was going to be, like, guaranteed to go back in it, right? Or to go in it. She didn't go back, but she would have got her name called twice. And at that point, because Katniss is a victor, though within the age, I'm not sure if they would have made a rule that even victors of that age can't volunteer again. Because we know Katniss and we know Peeta are both within range to go back again. They're 16. By this point, probably 17. I think by the end of Mockingjay, she's probably roughly 19 if we're going to go. I think she's anywhere from like 17 to 19. I guess we're going to do another part. When Katniss went into the second game, Snow was obsessed with Katniss at this point. Though, with that is the fact that when he couldn't do his one and only shot of getting rid of Katniss inside the arena the second time, that is where he knew he basically has fallen. Now, obviously, the war has arrived at that point. There was official attack on the Capitol. There was official attacks all over all the districts. And then Katniss, right before the games, I mentioned in one of the other areas that Cinna kind of used Katniss. Katniss being no more than 17 at this point, literally just getting out of one Hunger Game a year ago, is wild to then also have another person who she truly trusted never said anything about him, even when she made her a Mockingjay. I've seen another person mention the fact that Cinna did not give her a chance to say yes or no to twirling to get the Mockingjay outfit out of her wedding dress. Would she have done it? Probably. I mean, honestly, even if she didn't, she was not good with the cameras. She was not the talker. Peeta was the talker. Now, they didn't know what Peeta and Katniss were going to say, because they just left him alone. They're like, hey, you did it literally a year ago. You did it a bunch of times on the tour for months before this. This is only like 6 months later that the cameras are seeing them again up on stage, not for their wedding, but for another tribute, for another victory. So, even Katniss and Peeta actually didn't know what each other was going to say. Peeta knows Katniss is not much of a talker. Peeta goes first. The thing is, Peeta set her up to win. He set her up the first time to be a contender to win. He never thought he was going to make it out of the first game. She barely thought she was going to make it out of the first game, but actually thought maybe I have an actual chance. He was straight up like, I'm not coming back. And then the second time, he's like, I'm not coming back. His whole point, obviously, because he volunteered too, didn't he? Actually, I think I thought about that. I mentioned before that there was really only Mags, but they called Haymitch and Peeta volunteered. So there was a few volunteers. I just can't believe I forgot the main point of Peeta going in again. He wasn't supposed to. Here's the thing. Cinna didn't really give her a chance. He said, when they ask you to twirl, you can. And if they don't ask you this time, because he probably knows the Capitol wouldn't really want to ask her for what happened last time. She made a huge show and her whole dress enhanced the audience. And if Snow wants her out, they would want her to do the worst job she really could. Or she doesn't want to add more to enhance her and remember her. Where her first dress was rememberable. The intro was already rememberable. The intro of both games on the horses. They were the only ones, especially on the second one, they were the only ones young. They were the only ones who looked still true beautiful. They were, if they weren't in the games prior, they would still be able to be called as tributes. Where none of the other victors that were called upon were. I don't know who the winner of the year right before them was, but generally the winners are 16 to 18. Usually they're the 16-year-olds. So the ones who were when right before the games of Katniss had gained the 74th, so the 73rd, could also potentially been a chosen victor in the same youngness. But they chose the ones that we find out are all rebels in some form. They specifically chose who they chose to unalive all of them. They were going to basically have no victor, or they were going to give it to like Brutus or his sister from District 2, who maybe District 1, but they were going to make sure that all the people in the games were gone. That was the whole point of these games. So, except for Peeta. Peeta threw a wrench in there, and Mags threw a wrench in it, where, again, if Annie went in, everybody would know that Finnick is going to take care of Annie. They might even change it so instead of Katniss wins, Annie would win, or it became Annie and Katniss at the end. Obviously, they had a plan to just blow up the whole arena, but more than half of them got unalived before they even blew up the arena. And then most of the victors were unalived from both the district and inside the Capitol. I don't even know how many victors we started out with by the second game, but Katniss said every district was able to round up at least a boy and a girl. So we know there was minimum 24. And there was under 10 of those winners because they pretty much all, and then some have won or lost their lives after that. By the end of the table, after the unaliving of Prim, is Beatty, Joanna, Finnick, Annie, Peta, Katniss, Eleanor, Hamish. There was under 10 even inside that, and that was all of the victors in total, because she rounded up all of the living victors for that meeting about, do we have another Hunger Games? Do you want to have another Hunger Games? Which was when Katniss decided to coin. This was right after the unaliving of Prim, where Coin missed her one and only shot. I mentioned this every video. Coin missed her one and only shot to get rid of Katniss when she unalived Prim. This is always the main factor of Prim death, was both because Prim and Katniss. She wanted to use Prim as, I gave my chess analogy. Prim basically became a new queen. Katniss is still somewhat of a pawn. She is basically at the end of the board, about to make her tribute into a new piece. Because Snow couldn't get her out. He kept pushing her back before the end of the board. He would not allow her pawn to be moved across the board completely. After Prim's death, when she put Prim up in a game, so, you know, something like this, where she was hoping this piece and this piece would get taken out in the one shot, or two moves. But unfortunately for Coin, Snow already forfeited. Oh. Welcome back to. This is where we're at. My terrible chessboard. My terrible chessboard was. This is what we're gonna do. So, for the unaliving of Prim, this is the war. Prim is beloved by everybody in the entire Panem. At this point, Katniss lost the capital, and Peta lost the capital, I believe. Yeah, Peta lost the capital too. Peta got rescued by 13 and got Brack. This is another reason why I said Prim needed to get out in Corin's mind. I mentioned this again, this is going to be the most important video, because Prim had a conversation with Katniss about Katniss becoming the Mockingjay. When she did that, she is the sole reason Katniss is the Mockingjay. But she's also the sole reason of how Katniss became the Mockingjay. When you really think about it, when Katniss decided she might even become the Mockingjay, and if it was going to hurt Peta, how more, like, she realized she needs to do it. But every time she does it, she's gonna know that he is hurting Peta. When she talks to Prim, Prim says, you can ask for whatever you want, and they would have to give it to you. And Katniss is like, what? And she's like, you don't understand how valuable you are. They need you. They literally cannot say no to you. So, what does she do? Katniss makes a list. And how do they make it happen? Oh, Prim has said to Katniss, have her do it, or have them all do it, in front of the district. She says Coin could not go back on her word about Katniss's list if she says it in front of all of District 13, which is super important because it also one of the reasons why Coin already didn't want and like Katniss at all. She didn't want Katniss. She wanted Peeta. She wanted Katniss to be unalive and used as like a martyr. Martyr? I don't know how to pronounce that word. The thing is, Katniss. What was I gonna say? Where was I? Right. Coin wanted Katniss gone from basically the beginning. She wanted Peeta. They decided, Heaven be Huckabee, whatever. Anyway, the crew decided that nope, we're getting Katniss out of the arena. And that is something that they went against Coin for. And it gave Snow a chance to get the other ones because they had to decide with, oh, we can only get one of these two out in time. And they chose Katniss. Honestly, if they chose Peeta, he probably would have went to the Capitol without anybody caring, like not nobody caring, but without him caring about anybody else, to go get her. The other thing that Coin hates about Katniss is that Katniss did not follow any of District 13. I don't think there's a single point until the very end when she's training to be within what, 2 weeks, not even like a month before going to the Capitol for war. She does nothing. Of 13, what 13 does, she basically does nothing. She ends up hunting to give them more meat, so they all have a little bit more. But honestly, her schedules that they have, she never did it. She decided what she was going to do when she wanted to do it. And Coin, excuse me, Coin hated that because it went against all of her what her district was for. And now her district is kind of starting to like her because she's been a really good Mockingjay. And Coin hates her for doing a really good Mockingjay because she doesn't do anything that they ask her to do. All the really best parts about Katniss, even Hamish said, he's like, it's because she's being Katniss. The reason we follow her is because she does these things. You can't tell her what to do. I've been trying for 3 years at this point, 2 years, whatever we're at in timeline. He's like, I can't get her to pet a horse without, I just threw my marker. I can't even get her to pet a horse and by asking her to or telling her, oh, hey, for the camera, pet a horse. She's going to trip and fall on her face. But every time Katniss does whatever Katniss wants, she's really good at it. And Peeta is the opposite. Peeta was phenomenal at, you want me to say this? I got it 4 times better. Everything they gave him, he traveled with. And Katniss also came up with, if we burn, you burn with us. Where even everybody who was like the writers for her was like, oh, she did much better than what we had to say. Yeah, we didn't write that. Nope, she did. She just came up with it and phenomenal for her. Every time Coin had like the upper hand against Snow, it was really Katniss just doing whatever Katniss wanted to do. And she wasn't in control. That was the whole point. She controlled the district that Katniss was like, nah, nobody cares about you. At least I don't. Everything about your district, I'm just here because my family's here. I don't want to be here. I don't. She didn't want to go to war. They kind of had her go to war. She did have off some, Mockingjay, but she also didn't care at all in District 2. There comes a point where, again, Katniss did whatever Katniss wanted to do. In a form of what she believed in. And what was right. Hold on. So, I had to walk away, so I'm going back to where I was. When Katniss does whatever she wants, that's where I was at. There was other things going on with the people in the background. Obviously, we're not sure exactly what was going on because Katniss is all the first three written were Katniss's point of view. The other two could be like prequels, or they could also come after. Not the point. The point is, when Katniss, at least within Two, District 2, we find out that Prim is the reason Pete is not hijacked anymore, or getting much better from his hijacking. So now Prim has made a Mockingjay. First off, Prim is the beloved of all of Panem. Every single district and the capital still actually like Prim. They are all for Prim. Prim had made the Mockingjay. Prim had made it so the Mockingjay has the list that she wants to be the Mockingjay. Prim had made it so Coin cannot go back on her word because she made it so Coin had to, like, she came up with the idea that Coin has to stay in front of her district. She made PETA, who everybody also has really been liking, like another huge contributing factor in the war effort, be able to not unalive Katniss at this point, but also become himself for the most part. And that's all Prim. And she's, I don't know, she was like 12 in the first. She was 12 in the first one. If we're going by every year, she's like anywhere from 13 to 15, depending on her birthday and everything. Which, again, people with the ages are, I don't know. I don't know how the ages work. Because if we know that the first Hunger Game, the 74th Hunger Game, Prim is 12, Katniss is 16. The second game is a year later. So they should roughly be 17 and 13. And then the third book is basically the 76 Hunger Games. Because even like, oh shit, hold on. Let's continue. Anyways, so I described why Prim is such a huge, at least in Coin's mind, a contender for being able to get people to listen to her. People who, again, would go against Coin. They never said that Prim would or disliked Coin. Katniss definitely dislikes Coin. And honestly, again, same problem Snow had. They were focusing so much on Katniss. If Coin realized, and she should have, everybody knows that Katniss does and will listen to, at least listen to Prim. Why didn't Coin just try to get Prim 100% on her side to get Katniss 100% on her side? Like, instead of unaliving Prim. Because at this point, we know that it was Coin. Snow said it was Coin, and I guess, like, at that point, do you really want to listen to Snow? But we kind of know it was. We know Coin already has the technology for that, the thought process for that, we were there when Beta, whatever. However you want to say it in the books when you read it. And Gale had a full conversation about that. And even Katniss was like, I don't think we should do that. Like, isn't that unmoral? And they said, oh, well, the Capitol doesn't have morals. Why would we? When, even then, Katniss, I think, was really starting to be like, what side and when does it all end? She really didn't want to be the Mockingjay really to begin with. She realized afterwards that, yeah, this would help the people, all people. But it wasn't really because of the war. She saw a lot of things happen. She went back to District 12 twice after the bombing, and she realized really for herself to be the Mockingjay. And even Cinna said, do not give her the Mockingjay suit until she decides to be the Mockingjay. And even in District 13, she's realizing that they were also not that great. I mean, they also tortured her teammate, her designing team. She didn't like them, but she also didn't hate them. And Gail just could not comprehend that she's really having a lot of compassion, even more after being in the games twice at this point. And now going back for a third time, 3 times in a row, Katniss has been in the Hunger Games more than anybody else. I mean, at that point, everybody was in 2, except for Finnick. He happened to be in all 3 too. Him, Peeta, and Katniss were the only ones who were in all 3 Hunger Games that can be. And Finnick went through his own torturous stuff when they were young, like in between his games and the next Court of Quill. That's the word I was looking for. The thing is, Prim unaliving was because Coin wanted to get her, Prim, and Katniss out. What better way to get Katniss to do whatever you want is to Laurel Prim, put Prim in front of her. Because at that point inside the war, there was what they thought that team, Katniss's team, were dead. Snow was like, oh, hey, everybody got them. And then Coin came on and gave Katniss a huge, eulogy. Like, oh, we're still going to fight for her and all this. And then they realized, nah, they're still alive. Katniss is still alive. They know by that time of those bombings that Katniss is still alive with Gale, Peeta, and they think at that point, because they weren't sure about Finnick, and there was a few of them. Their own videotaping team was still alive. All 3 of those, no, 2 of those ones. And the point is, she had a eulogy ready for Katniss. She sent Peeta in, forgetting that honestly they worked so hard, or not forgetting, but I think she realized that, hoping that if she can get Peeta out of being helped, that maybe he would break and unalive Katniss. They know that from the beginning. Even her best man, her right-hand man, Bugs, the one who is actually one of the only adults who truly enjoyed just wanting to have Katniss as a young girl and have he was like, I have daughters. You've done your part over and over again. He's like, they shouldn't have had a 16-year-old, 17-year-old girl, 18-year-old girl having to go through all this. He's like, it's wild. And now to have her wanting to be unalive for all of Pan Am to see, he was like, you deserve more. And he did everything he could to get her to be alive at the end, which I can't fix this, whatever. He did. Boggs was very helpful in getting Katniss to be alive by the end of this. And he was a contributing factor on not only her being alive, but also Peeta. And she does. She gets to have, they get married, and they eventually have kids. During the war, and at the mansion, right before, when Coin knows that Katniss, Peeta, Gale, and a few others she was not sure 100% who had gone in their teams, but they know for a fact Katniss is still alive. She never wanted Katniss alive. But after she already made a eulogy for her, she's not sure. At this point, Katniss and her team could have went up to the rebels and talked to the rebels. She well known in the whole district. Everywhere. She Pan Am knows who Katniss is. The rebels would have helped her out, no problem. The Capitol would have killed her in a matter of seconds. If she went to the rebel camp and not directly to Snow, or technically went to Tigris, if she went back at some point into the rebels, don't you think the rebels would have been like, oh, hey, Katniss, by the way, your sister's here? Everybody knows her. Everybody in Pan Am knows who Prim is. Just as much as they know who Katniss is, who Peeta is, who Gale is, who's Haymitch, who's Coin, and who's Snow. At this point, if she went back to the rebels and did not go to Tigris, they would have told Katniss, oh, hey, by the way, your sister's here. Why is her sister there? She's what, 14, 15 max at this point? She's the front line of where the biggest main battle is at not even 15. And even in District 13, they don't become soldiers until 14. Inside District 13, who grows up studying and the whole time with them. And in District 12, they changed it a little. When District 12 came in, they changed it a little bit because, like, the adults don't know anything about how 13 ran, so they can't have the adults at the same level as they would normally be, like an 18-year-old being as a soldier at 14. So they know she's obviously medically trained. That was even, I think, Katniss' list of Prim being medical trained. The point is this. They had a 15-year-old and thought that was a good idea, and nobody decided to go against her. If Katniss talked to the rebels, Katniss would immediately change her course and went straight to Prim. She would have chosen Prim over unaliving Snow. She would have chosen her sister. Honestly, what she probably would have done is went to Prim, gave her the Mockingjay suit, because again, she wasn't expecting to live that long. Katniss wasn't planning on doing much more. Probably get Prim her Mockingjay suit because it was based out of everything. It out leveled literally everybody and everything, and it looked great on her. And then probably just taken a soldier outfit and continued her way to Snow. But she would have stopped in her tracks and went directly to Snow, to Prim. That's not what happened. What did happen was Katniss couldn't get to Prim in time. Not just, again, I'm thinking more couldn't get to Prim in time when she landed there. They then made it live. They recorded it according to Snow, and we could agree that he's probably right. Whether he tried to manipulate or not, the point is his information had never been inaccurate. He just uses it when he wants to. When he knows it's going to make the biggest impact is when he uses his information. He tells Katniss, even then, he even tells Katniss, oh, I would have just told you. He's like, honestly, I don't really care, but like, it was unnecessary. I already was going to give up by that point. Why would I do that? There was no reason. And if I had a plane, I would have left. Why would I be here if I had a good plane that could do all this? No, I would have just and left. Which makes sense. I mean, honestly, even Katniss is like, yeah, something's weird. Why wouldn't so even Katniss was, before seeing Snow, he was like, why wouldn't Snow just get on the plane and leave? When everybody in the world knows faces because they were on TV all the time and watching like that live, who do you think they zoomed in on? Just like now, they're gonna zoom in on Prim being there, even if it was they said, oh, they filmed it to show that we are still the rebels are going to make sure the Capitol is fine because we want to be a whole country again and whatever. So they would film the person everybody knows and loves, which is Prim. So the focus of the camera would have been on Prim. What did Prim do? She looked up when she heard their name. Like, camera's gonna move on to Katniss. Everybody would see Katniss on a pole. It's even with her makeup and her clothes on, they couldn't still get rid of the fact that it's Katniss. Even she had to put her head down because everybody knows who Katniss is. They're gonna follow Prim straight to Katniss's face. Boop! That's when the bomb goes off. Right? Coin could have waited, and Katniss was even like, Katniss and Prim were focused on each other. Katniss was like, Prim? And she like looked up. They were close enough where they could. Sometimes you also can just like feel energy of like someone looking at you and just like know that like Katniss from a pretty good like just far enough distance. Oh, that's Prim. And when she said it, Prim was like, oh, I have a feeling, and it's Katniss. She wasn't close enough to get unalived in the bombing, and her suit was decked out and saved her for the most part. She was just about to go down and run to Prim. If Coin waited, that would have been, she would have been done for. Both of them would have been gone in that one button push. But she didn't. Coin missed her shot. That was the one and only shot, and she knew it. She straight up knew. That was the one and only shot to get rid of two birds and one stone. At this point, and this is, oh, okay. Gale was on Coin's side. My last chess analogy, right? Coin was and still is on one side. In chess, you can be in both check and checkmate. No, Snow out. I don't think Coin realized that it was almost like Katniss took the place of Snow. Not in like a sense of what she's going to do with Snow, like meaning Snow, like say Snow's side of the chessboard was in check, and he just could not think of a way out, which he didn't. Let's be real, like he literally gave up. Katniss was a main player on Coin's side. When Coin tried to get rid of, she did get rid of Prim, and tried to get rid of Katniss multiple times. I feel like Katniss took her piece off the board of 4 Coin and basically sat behind the chair where Snow was. Snow was in check. He left, couldn't think of anything else, and Katniss is like, I got this. And sat across from like Coin on a chessboard. Obviously not really, but in that sense. Where Katniss then took her own players from Coin's side onto her side. She took Peeta, she took Gale, she took Hamish. At least minimum. Gale ends up getting taken back from Coin. Coin ends up taking it, which she was like, cool. She like gave Gale the, again, in chess you can put certain pieces as like a way to kind of save other ones and enhance people to go for those pieces, right? She basically said, bye Gale, whatever. When I said before, Hamish ended up with basically the queen the entire time, is what and who did Hamish do for all 3 books? And yes, he has his own book, which I don't want to get into right now because I want people to still be able to read it. So I'm going to try to make it just his book. Hamish is the only mentor that was able to get 2 people victor. First off, not only did he make sure at minimum Katniss would have won anyways. Katniss basically what it, honestly, I think Katniss, basically she was up for the top 3 anyways. Granted, it's her story, but even Hamish specifically sent her thing over PETA. He got both of them to be the end, both of them out. He convinced people to get both of them out, and he was the only one to have 2 victors. With those 2 victors, he was then able to save them a second time. Hamish is the reason they really had allies in the second one. Now, Katniss did choose, because PETA was like, I don't care, choose whoever you want. Whoever you think you could win with. Because again, PETA wanted Katniss to win. He wasn't playing for himself. He was playing for Katniss. He said, pick whoever you want. And Katniss picked some of Hamish's favorite people. And now we also know some of the best rebels. But Hamish is the reason why they had Finnick and they had Joanna. Because Katniss didn't want either of them. She was okay with Finnick, but she was like, love Mags. And she was like, well, Finnick is going wherever Mags is going. If I can get the people I want, I guess, nuts and bolts, which we know is Beta and, Wirus. And she wanted Mags. And she's like, okay, I will take Finnick if I really have to because of Max. But then they said, oh, I got a 12 and people are hunting me down. I will not survive this. They do not. And then they said, you know what? We're going to have no teammates. Katniss and Peeta went into the second Hunger Games expecting nobody to be on their side. And Finnick said, boop, and shows the bracelet Hamish said. And Katniss in her head was like, oh, Hamish picked them for me. Hamish made sure he talked to everybody, got around to everybody, made allies for her, and then did it again, 13. On her radio, he's like, even the one time she pulls it out, he's like, if you pull out your earpiece while I'm speaking to you ever again, I'm going to implant one, and you're going to hear my voice all the time. And that actually was like the only thing she really registered in Katniss's head, because she's like, nope, I do not want Hamish in my head all the time. When, right after the unaliving of Prim happens, okay, not right after, I think there was like a month where she's getting fixed and her skin's coming back, she can't speak, she's a mess. But on the day of Snow's unaliving, she talks to Snow, and Coin brings in the victors. There's very little left, but she brings them all in, and she's like, hey, want to know the Hunger Games? We know at this point, Katniss is already like, I'm done. I'm done with her. I'm done with everybody. I lost the one and only person I want. I'm done. But she doesn't even know exactly what she wants to do yet. It's not exactly a game plan in her head. Hamish says, I'm with the Mockingjay. He doesn't say yes. He doesn't say no. He doesn't say I'm with the Coin, whatever you want. No, he's like, I'm with the Mockingjay. Looked at her. And him and Katniss have the conversations that they always have. And they both say yes. And Coin's like, oh, great, they're with me, blah, blah, blah. No. Hamish looked at Katniss and was like, oh, we're in trouble. Katniss is going to do whatever Katniss wants to do because he's been with her long enough. And he knows Katniss. He would never actually have said yes to do basically anything because she doesn't listen to anybody. And Peeta was adamant about saying no. There was a lot of them, about half and half. But how Katniss said, yeah, directly at her, like, yes. Hamish knew Katniss is going off script. And again, Katniss going off script is anything and everything can happen. Right after that meeting, they split up. Peeta is still so mad that they said yes. Hold on. At this point, Hamish is with Katniss. Katniss took one of the biggest players Coin had immediately. Second biggest, PETA. What can Hamish do really, really well, along with PETA? It's talk. Get people to listen to him. Like I said, somehow he convinced them to actually allow both of those two to be victors. Buddy. When the meeting was adjourned, Katniss goes to get ready for her Mockingjay outfit, get ready for the unaliving of Snow. And that's when she runs into Gale. But why wouldn't, at that point, they had plenty of time to have a conversation with Gale, get ready, and then go to where they're taking place. I bet Hamish talked to PETA then. Because PETA was super mad at them for saying yes when he wanted no. They should have also known and said no. Who's it? Why wouldn't they have had a conversation? I think, and because Hamish also was not there when, at least in the down area, when Katniss took her shot, and instead of going at Snow, she hit Coin. Katniss took her one and only shot because they only gave her one bow, and guess what? She got the two birds out of one stone out of that. Because Katniss never misses. That was the whole point. Katniss does not miss her shot. Everybody else can't be as good as Katniss. She is one of, if not the best. They had that whole squad who was sharpshooters, the best sharpshooters, and she was actually made it onto their team. She doesn't miss her shot. But Hamish wasn't down there. PETA was. And PETA refused to allow her to take her pill. He actually got bit in the hand by Katniss when she went to take her pill after the shot. Which really leaves me to believe. And then that the whole plan that Hamish and PETA came together. Hamish was like, listen, no, we didn't actually say yes. Katniss was trying to fool people. He's like, Katniss is gonna go off script like she always does, and I'm gonna be there for her. You decide. What are you doing here, PETA? And PETA's obviously like, I'm down. They don't know what it is. They have no idea exactly what's gonna happen. But they know something's gonna happen. Which, honestly, it's kind of cool. But Hamish needs to start getting people on his side and get Katniss out of whatever Katniss just got herself into. Because somehow Katniss actually gets out of the trial. She doesn't even go on the stand. But with enough evidence and talking to enough people and getting enough people on her side, Hamish, who's basically in charge of her trial with some other, like a few other people, got her off. And that's pretty impressive. And I think PETA was supposed to help her get her off. But the problem was that PETA ended up going into it, seeing them, what they were doing to Katniss, triggered him. And he couldn't be there as much as he wanted. Originally, I think Hamish and PETA had a goal like, we got this. You're a talker. I'm backstage. She does whatever she does. You talk about it. I'll back people up with us. And unfortunately, at that point, Hamish had to protect both Katniss and PETA again, which he's really good at. Even if he didn't want them as a friend or an ally or just to physically let them in at all and whatever, he's really good and he's really understanding and knowing what they want. And he is saving them in the backstage. And honestly, that's where most of why I said he was basically being the queen in the chess game is because sometimes the queen is just the backbone and hides and can hit people off the side and not actually go after the pawn. He was the reason why Katniss had in her head for all the war areas. He was helping her what to say, what to do, when to back off. He was in control. He was working with Katniss the entire time. When Katniss said, I want that woman out, he was like, all right, got you. I'm down. I agree. First off, he didn't care. He didn't care about Coin. He didn't care about Snow. He was just wanting neither. He never actually said he likes Coin. He just liked her better than Snow. And he immediately was like, I like them the most. I'm down for whatever the Mockingjay wants. And he didn't say Katniss, he said the Mockingjay because, again, I think he knew she was about to do whatever she wanted, and people were either going to back her or not back her. And he's not the only one. I mean, she got allowed in to see Snow, not through Coin, through District 8 leaders. And really enjoy District 8 said she deserves to see whatever's back there as much as any, if not more than anybody else. I think District 8 leader also knew that it was Coin. And she actually became in charge, and she didn't do another her game. From what we read the rest of the book there, she did great. From the epilogue of Mockingjay, they actually really enjoyed her, which good for her. But that's my end of the story. I think the hour long thank you for waiting with me, and I appreciate it. And I got a little distracted, but I think needing background information was important for why not only unaliving a Prim was Coin's one and only shot of getting rid of Katniss and Prim at the same time, but it was her. We already knew it was her downfall. How it was her downfall, I think Katniss realized eventually, like, you know what? One shot, that's all I got. But I think that was the point. Katniss never misses her one shot. Not only is it just, it was Prim's unaliving meant Coin's unaliving. It was the fact that it was another shot miss, meeting a shot that never misses. And she got both of them out at the same time. And knew she didn't even care, didn't even really know how much of a backup she had. But realizing the backup she had, Katniss got to enjoy what she deserved to enjoy. There is a point that she deserved what she got at the end because of how she ended up living prior. And I thought that was important. And I thought that was just not really ever spoke about, mostly because, like, there was multiple reasons why Coin wanted Prim out herself. And that was the big one, I think, because she had sway over the entire area and over Katniss when nobody else did. And Coin could not handle that. And she needed both of those out. And she only got one. And she got the lesser evil of a one. She made Katniss go rogue. And it proved how bad Katniss should not go rogue. And able to how many people really can back Katniss. Alright. Thank you. I'll see you in another one. I'm potentially going to make more of these. I make a couple of art videos, and I'm going to do what I want. To learn how to speak to people out loud about what I know. So, thank you. See you later.